I have heard many people say that we are living in a simulation because some things are just too weird to be probabilistic or happenstance or circumstance. Just yesterday, we hear that thousands of supporters of President Bolsonaro in Brazil stormed into their capital. And of course, Democrats are now screaming in outrage. AOC saying 2 years ago, fascists stormed our capital. And now the same movement of fascists is in Brazil. Well, the reason people are saying that we live in a simulation is because, do I have this tweet pulled up properly? Where is it? Here we go. Hodge twins with Brazil has their own damn shaman too. So we're hearing that 2 days after the anniversary, January 6th, Brazil is having a January 6th, and there is even a shaman? Seriously? Okay. Now, as soon as I saw that, I said, yes, clearly we live in a simulation. Because how could this playbook be so similar? Unless, of course, it is a playbook. It's planned. It's all part of the same operation, the same strategy for shutting down right-wing populism. Okay, well, we got to talk about what happened with the storming of the Brazilian capital. More importantly, Democrats calling for the extradition of Bolsonaro, who's in Florida, because that's fascistic and insane. The dude didn't commit a crime. Other people did. But I got bad news for you, my friends. Yeah, the shaman photo is old. I think it's like a year and a half old. And I think it may be a guy who is literally emulating the Q shaman. So people are sharing this photo and being like, what? They stormed the Capitol and they had a shaman? What's going on? Actually, no, shaman dude's from something totally different. But Brazil does have their own shaman. It's just, it's not simulation. It's not magical. It just literally is. It's probably a guy just imitating the Q shaman dude. But this is big news. Bolsonaro is seen as a Trump-like figure. After he lost his election, many people said that it was stolen. I don't know a lot about how the Brazilian elections work, so I cannot attest to anything, nor do I typically ever. So take it with a grain of salt. I encourage you to look into whatever was going on in Brazil so you can understand the arguments. I'm sure we'll hear some, but I will say, as we read the news, particularly about how there was a storming of the Capitol, take it all with a grain of salt. I don't trust the New York Times. This is foreign news. You know, obviously, we see a lot about what goes on in Ukraine, and there's political interests here. The West wants Bolsonaro out. They want Lula, who is the more neo-lib candidate, because he's more pro-U.S. and Bolsonaro is more pro-BRICS, which is this alternate economic bloc, which admittedly is pretty bad for us and I think could lead to a lot of war. But I am not going to pretend to know everything about Brazilian politics. Bolsonaro was seen as a right-wing populist. He was seen as pushing back against the woke left and a lot of this degeneracy. So you can understand why something like this would happen. But let's start by seeing what the New York Times has to say about what went down. Bolsonaro supporters lay siege to Brazil's capital. Backers of former President Jair Bolsonaro ransacked government offices, denouncing what they falsely claim was a rigged election. Hundreds were arrested. You know what really grinds my gears? Why do you need to say the word falsely? What they falsely claim were a rigged election. They claim it. The fact that they're claiming it shows it's not a proven thing. This is what's so creepy about the corporate press. If I claim the sky is green, it doesn't mean I've definitively proven the sky is green. If homeboy comes out and says, yo, I think that election was fake, it's like, okay, you claimed it. You didn't prove it. I don't need to be like, you falsely claimed it. What? It's just very, very weird. You know, look, man, we've been dealing with some stuff culture war wise. And let me just put it this way. It is a weird cult out there. And you know it and I know it and we've seen it. But I got to tell you, man, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to infringe on people's privacy, because I was talking to some friends who had some drama stuff happen. But I'm just like, I got to say this. When a handful of people say something that seemingly doesn't make sense, don't be scared of them. Just be like, hey, that's stupid and doesn't make sense. I got no problem talking ish in front of anybody about what I think. I got no problem saying, why are you saying the word falsely in front of the word claimed? That's stupid. But there are people who are like, I don't know, if I speak up, people are going to accuse me of being a Trump supporter. So what, man? You know, I really do wish people would grow a pair of balls and just say what you think. But then people will be mean to me. Ooh, yeah. You know, look, man, We've got to speak up and speak out about whatever all this BS, how we feel, what we think, lest we be pushed into the corner. I'll tell you what they're trying to do. I'll tell you what they're doing. They're pushing you into a position where you feel you can't speak so that kids grow up thinking what is being spoken is normal. You better start talking. But I'm getting a little offbeat here. Here's a story from the New York Times. I'll talk a bit more about that in another segment. Thousands of supporters of Brazil's ousted former president Jair Bolsonaro stormed Brazil's Congress, Supreme Court, and presidential offices on Sunday to protest what they falsely claim was a stolen election. The violent culmination of years of conspiracy theories advanced by Mr. Bolsonaro and his right-wing allies. In scenes reminiscent of the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol, protesters in Brasilia, Brazil's capital, draped in the yellow and green of Brazil's flag, surged into the seats of power, setting fires, repurposing barricades as weapons, knocking police officers from horseback and filming their crimes as they committed them. Oh, I love this. We always said we would not give up, one protester declared as he filmed himself among hundreds of protesters pushing into the Capitol building. Congress is ours. We are in power. I wish the good people of Brazil got the message. I understand there's a lot of people who are angry with government, but standing in a building in the 21st century does not give you political power. It used to, because you controlled the central hub and you controlled access to information and communications. Controlling communications is what did it. If we're talking about even the early 1900s and you take over a building and you get the radios and say, we are now in control. All these soldiers and cops everywhere are like, what do we do? Because no one can give us orders. If you control the central line of communication, who can give orders? Well, there is no central line of communication anymore. You take over a building, some other dude just gets on the cell phone and says, arrest them, I'm still here. So, I'd like to say you could just take over, but you can't. I mean that somewhat facetiously. Mr. Bolsonaro and his right-wing allies. Okay, well, as I pointed out, this is the gist of the story. They're in Brasilia. They storm in. Everybody's losing their minds. We have this from AOC. Let's talk about what I think is the real damning story here, the Democrat reaction to it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, nearly 2 years to the day the U.S. Capitol was attacked by fascists. We see fascist movements abroad attempt to do the same in Brazil. We must stand in solidarity with Lula oficial's democratically elected government. The U.S. must cease granting refuge to Bolsonaro in Florida. Whoa, 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 whoa. What? What did Bolsonaro do? He's sitting in Florida. A bunch of his supporters go into a bunch of buildings. He didn't do it. You see, this is the fascism that we see with Democrats and people like AOC. It needs to be called out. This is what we need to stop, because it ain't just her. Biden urged to extradite Bolsonaro from Florida, bolt hole, as rioters storm Brazil's presidential palace. I wonder what Bolsonaro's doing in Florida, mind you. Maybe he's hanging out with Donald Trump. Quote, he basically used the Trump playbook to inspire domestic terrorists to try and take over the government. Here's what the Independent reports. Democratic Congress members are calling on Joe Biden to deport former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro back to his country after his supporters stormed the National Congress in an effort to reinstate his power. Thousands of Bolsonaro supporters bypassed security barricades, climbed on roofs, and invaded the country's National Congress, Supreme Court, and presidential palace, blah, blah, blah. Texas Representative Joaquin Castro called on the Biden administration and local authorities on Sunday to extradite dangerous Mr. Bolsonaro to Brazil when his followers dressed in green and yellow began attacking government buildings. Quote, Bolsonaro should be extradited to Brazil, Mr. Castro told CNN. Bolsonaro was an authoritarian leader, the member of Congress said, adding that the far-right president basically used the Trump playbook to inspire domestic terrorists to try and take over the government. Right now, he's in Florida, actually very close to Donald Trump. He should be extradited to Brazil. For what crime? For what crime? I mean, these people are out of their minds. In fact, it was reported that he was under investigation for corruption and fled Brazil to the United States. He's a dangerous man. They should send him back to his home country, Brazil. Jim Acosta, you know him, you love him, says, are you calling on the Biden administration or authorities in Florida to return Bolsonaro, put him on a plane and send him to Brazil as soon as possible? Jim, you're not a smart guy. He literally said those words. Yes, absolutely. The U.S. should not be a refuge for this authoritarian who is inspired domestic terrorism in Brazil. His Democratic colleague AOC showed her support. Yeah. We saw that one. These people are nuts. Meanwhile, over 300 people have been arrested by the police as the president vows to punish the vandals. These vandals, who we could call fanatical Nazis, amazing, fanatical Stalinists, fanatical fascists, did what has never been done in the history of this country, Mr. Lula said in a press conference, declaring a federal security intervention in the capital until the end of the month. Brazil's Minister of Institutional Relations said the buildings would be inspected for evidence, including fingerprints and images to hold people to account. And that the rioters apparently intended to spark similar such actions nationwide. Justice Minister Flavio Dino said the acts amounted to terrorism and coup mongering, and that authorities have begun tracking those who paid for the transportation to the protests of the protesters. They will not succeed in destroying Brazilian democracy. We need to say that fully, with all firmness and conviction. We will not accept the path of criminality to carry out our political fights in Brazil. A criminal is treated like a criminal. Interesting, to say the least, my friends. Well, I think the official reporting is that security forces have regained control after Bolsonaro supporters stormed the Capitol and Congress. All right, well, it's not just Joaquin Castro. It's not just AOC. It's also our good friend Joe Biden. Let me pull up the Hill. Biden condemns assault on democracy after rioters storm Brazil government offices. President Biden condemned the protesters who stormed the government offices in Brazil on Sunday in rioting reminiscent of the January 6 attack on the U.S. Capitol, vowing that Brazil's democratic institutions have his administration's full support. All right, let's do the countdown. How long until they say Trump did it, Trump inspired it, it's Trump's fault, Trump had a hand in it, Trump's talking with Bolsonaro? It's an unfair question, I guess, because Joaquin Castro already said this was the Trump playbook. Here comes Joe Biden. I want to say, my friends, I think we all know Joe Biden didn't actually say this. Somebody working for Joe Biden wrote it, claimed Joe Biden said it. I condemn the assault on democracy and the peaceful transfer of power in Brazil, Biden said in a statement posted on Twitter. Brazil's democratic institutions have our full support, and the will of the Brazilian people must not be undermined. I got a question. What about the will of the people who stormed the Capitol? Is the insinuation that this group is not pronounced, is not large, is not of the people, they're a minority? I mean, that is a serious question. I am not saying they represent the will of the people. I'm saying, do you just not consider that protest an element of the will of the people? Let's talk about what democracy means. Democracy means there's going to be a large group of minority individuals who are angry and demand representation. And if that means they're going to storm a Capitol, you still have to contend with it. I'll tell you what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this kind of stuff. Obviously, I don't think it accomplishes anything for the Brazilian people. I think, in fact, it just empowers the security state, empowers Biden, because we're trying to convince regular people to stop being scared. But then you will see law enforcement go out, arrest people. That's what we have. I think we have mass arrests. You will see mass arrests. Is it the Reuters story? Do we have this one? I don't know. Bolsonaro's Florida stay puts ball in Biden's court, Brasilia writes. Here's what I was trying to say earlier on when I was talking about people needing to speak up. I'm dealing with people. You know what, guys? I'm going to say it. I'm dealing with people who are fans of the show, who say, we watch you all the time. We love what you do. But oh, heavens me, I couldn't speak out. And I'm like, dude, come on, man. Now, that is one of the biggest insults you could ever say to me. So if you ever do see me in public, feel free to say what's up. But if you say to me, I'm a big fan, but I'm also someone who refuses to express myself and speak up, I feel like it's just an insult. It's because I'll tell you why. Now, look, I get it. I fully understand that people are like, I'll lose my job. Like, what am I supposed to do? No. I get it. I'm sympathetic to that. I'm empathetic to that. But it's like, there are people who say things like, you don't have to worry about it because you're, independent or, dude. I did lose my job. I did walk off my job. I did walk off a very high paying multi-million-dollar contract. I said, I won't do this. And I tried breaking the contract. That's what brings me here today. But there are people who won't speak up. And because of it, there is no recognition to the true will of the people. I firmly believe the will of the people rests in the moderate to right space. Conservatives and moderates are probably making up the largest faction because I see it all the time. People come up to me and say, like, I'm a big fan of the show. I love what you do. You know, I walked down the street. Me and Luke were at Whole Foods the other day, and the guy was like, was that Luke? Oh, man, wow. And he, nice to meet you. See, I can respect that because it's like you're willing to say, what's up? You got no fear. That's what I'm talking about. But there are people who are like, I better keep my head down and shut up. Okay, because of that, that's why people don't understand. Okay, I'll put it this way. I'm going to try and bring these ideas together. If every single person who believed something waved a flag and that was it, all of this would be done. In Brazil, when you see these kinds of protests, the reason why I say they're bad, and it's tough, right? It's a double-edged sword. It's like I'm saying speak up. I am not saying to storm a Capitol. Because when you do, regular people get more scared. That's what worries me. There are a lot of people that are scared about January 6th. That's why they did it. The reason why law enforcement kicked down doors, rounded people up, and locked them in solitary for 2 years without charge or trial is because they want you scared. So for one, don't go storming into Capitol buildings. You're not gonna take political power by standing in a building. It's not how it works these days. More importantly, in the United States, you have free speech. In Brazil, you don't. That I get. But in the U.S., simply stand up, express yourself, and just say, so be it. Or you know what? Fine. Live under the boot. The reason why I say it's an insult when people come up to me and they're like, yo, I'm a big fan, but I will never speak up, is because you're saying, I will watch the world burn before I ever let my friends know I like you. That is like, look, I'm sorry, man. I feel like you're spitting on me. Not everybody does it. 99% of the people who say, what's up? It's rad. Because they walk right up, they fist bump me. I went to the opening of the Hagerstown skate park in Maryland. Jam-packed, wall to wall. People were coming up, high-fiving, fist bumping, and it was rad. And I was like, cool, man, I appreciate it. Let's skate. And that was it. People who are willing to be in public like, dude, F the haters. I respect what you do. I appreciate what you do. I'm standing right here with you. I'm like, dude, I respect that tremendously. I understand some people don't want to lose their jobs and they're scared they will. Totally get it. But imagine what it would be like if someone came to you and was like, we're really good friends, you know, or I got one for you. Imagine you're dating some chick or you're dating some dude and you're like, this is the best relationship ever. And then when you go out in public, they're like, dude, I can't be seen with you because it's too embarrassing. Like people are gonna talk down to me for being with you. So I won't let anyone know. Like, come on, dude. Imagine hanging out with your buddies at a bar. And then all of a sudden he looks over and he sees like someone from his work walking. He goes, dude, I cannot be seen hanging out with you, and gets up and storms off. You'd think that's a friend. So when I see people and they're like, hey, I'm a big fan, but I can't let anybody know. And I'm like, dude, you're not a fan. Come on. Because you're like basically saying you'd be embarrassed to be seen with me. That's basically it. I believe that if everybody stood up calmly and peacefully, so again, you know, wrapping these ideas together, I think part of what happens is without a massive showing of public support, you get a storming of the Capitol. People feel like they have no support. They take desperate moves. Then when you storm a Capitol, the police come in, they start rounding people up. They're charging them. They're going after anyone who funded the protests. Same thing in January 6th in the United States. And then these regular people who are scared double down on being scared. What we need is just a mass showing. We need people to stop being scared. That's it. Because it pisses me off that we know, you and I know, that we are on the right side of history, as the left likes to say. But that won't be the case if you hide. If you sit in a basement, if you refuse to speak up. The history books are being written, my friends, and what they will say in the end is entirely up to you. But if you decide not to be involved because you don't want to say anything, then your voice will not be recorded. And for all anyone knows, you completely agreed with everything they were doing. Do you agree with what they're doing? Well, if you don't speak up, you know what the left says? Silence is violence. Okay, I'm not going to say anything as dumb as that. I'm just going to be a bit more logical and say, if there's 100 people and 75 of them believe in liberty and freedom, but 30 of them are scared to speak up, you will end up with 25 lunatic extremist activists, but you'll only see 45% of the people actually speaking up, so you look like a minority. And even though that 25% actually is, they will claim the other 30% is theirs. They will take seats in cultural institutions, and you, who refuse to speak up, are effectively a slave of their ideology, in chains, marching behind them, assisting them in destroying the fabric of our nation and Western civilization. So, without being overly dramatic, don't storm into Capitol buildings. That doesn't work. All you have to do is be yourself. It's that simple, I guess. It's not easy, though. Of course it won't be. But I'll wrap it up there, my friends. Thanks so much for hanging out. You can see the format's a little different these days, and still trying to figure out how to, make this all work. I was saying before, I wanted to do a live morning show, but I'm not sure we're there yet. We did a trial run Thursday-ish. We did a trial run Friday-ish. It worked sort of. There are a lot of people we lose who don't watch because they're like, I just want to watch a monologue. I'm done. And we're putting those up, but it created confusion. Confusion is not beneficial. So we need to figure out how we do it. And I think it may be that it has to be a new channel with a new show. And that's just the way to do it. That way, only the people who want to watch live can watch live and everyone else sees nothing change. It's tough. I don't have all the answers. We'll figure it out. We got some good friends coming up to hang out, and we'll see how things work. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. I think I'm actually going to do a bunch more segments today. We'll see how it plays out, but we'll see you all then.